Everyone, my next guest is the newest addition to the UFC's Bantamweight division. He is kind enough to give me some time on this fine Tuesday night. Colby Thicknesse, mate, I really appreciate you giving me some time after training. I know you've had a pretty long session this afternoon, so I sincerely appreciate it. First thing I want to know from you, man, is how are you personally? Aside from fighting, outside of the cage, how is Colby Thicknesse doing on a personal level?
I'm doing really good, bro. Thank you firstly for having me on, but I'm in a very good position in my life. Like I've ticked off one of my childhood goals of becoming a UFC fighter. I've got my foot in the door now. I get another opportunity. Family's healthy, my friends are healthy, got a good partner. I've moved out now, so things are really looking up. Like this last sort of month and a half have been quite chaotic with
Mm.
everything going on, but it's put me in a very good position. So I'm very grateful for everything that has happened and how it has happened as well.
Awesome, man. That's really good to hear. Look, first thing I want to start on was obviously the fight at UFC 312. Um, it's been coming up to a month now. It'll be a month in a few days since the fight. I imagine you have some time to digest, and after a month, you'd have time to look back on things and see where you went wrong and see things you'd improve on and those sort of things. How do you look back on the fight overall now, a month removed?
I look back and I hold my head high just due to the circumstances of how everything played out due to the notice.
Mhm.
However, there is a lot of things I did in that fight that I don't necessarily do in the training room, which is somewhat annoying because I do think that I can win that fight back. However, it's good when you get pushed to that limit, like, because, pardon me, when I think I was 3-0 as an amateur. I then lost, and then I went on something like a 14 or a 15 fight win streak. Became number one amateur in Australia, number one professional, got signed to the UFC, and I've just had my first professional loss now. So I'm very keen to see where this will elevate me into my career. As for the month gone, I've been in the gym since I had Monday off, straight back into the gym Tuesday, training like normal, already fixing the little holes and tactical mistakes I've made. So I'm just very keen to get back in camp and get ready for the next one.
Absolutely, man. And look, with the UFC fight week, it's such a big change, especially a pay per view. Making your debut on a pay per view would be maybe a little bit easier to settle in if it was a fight night or an Apex card. Maybe you can get the hang of things a little bit smoother. But going into coming from a hex show straight into these fight nights in Bali, I know you were fighting on too. Coming into the change from that coming into a UFC pay per view fight week is quite a stark contrast. You know what I mean? It's so different. And my question for you, man, was how did you feel fight week, and was there anything that could have prepared you for fight week, and how did you feel like you handled it overall?
To be honest, bro, I actually think Fight Week was probably the best thing for me. Like, I honestly felt more nervous for a couple of my Hex and Bali fights just due to circumstances around them. I think purely because I've always known I was going to be a UFC fighter. It wasn't if I was going to get in; it was just when. And as for all the media and that, like, I'm naturally a very extroverted person, and I love talking. I love doing podcasts. I love sort of interaction and just meeting people who are keen on fighting. So when you're on a UFC fight, like everybody's genuinely interested in you. We obviously had a very cool narrative and backstory behind the
Mm.
fight. Plus, I've had the privilege where I've done The Ultimate Fighter with Volk. I've seen everything that goes into that TV show. I've done fight weeks. I was over there when he fought Yair, so I've done all the training with PI. I've done training when he's been over in Perth. Seen him do all the media, the press conference, and everything like that. So it wasn't too surreal because I've been around it all before. I've got to have that backstage look. I've obviously got to see how Volk is when he does his fight week stuff. So it's just more, I didn't really need to pick his brain because I'm naturally just a sponge around him. So I felt like I was very well suited for that. And for some reason, I think maybe because it was so chaotic, it was funny, I was talking about the fight, but I wasn't necessarily thinking about the fight. It was just like, do this, do that, train, do this, do that. So I was always constantly busy. So I only got nervous about the fight once, I think, and that was before I just started to cut weight. Because I think that was the first time where I had nothing on. I just had a couple of hours to chill
Mm,
and do that. But besides that, even the walkout and everything, like it was honest to God the best I've ever felt walking out to a fight. So
mm.
I'm very keen for the next one. I'm very happy that the UFC is such a big machine as it is, because I really do like that they give the ability to fighters to put themselves out there and grow their brand and sort of grow your own platform that way.
Absolutely, and I think that may be the difference with fighters succeeding and fighters not succeeding in the UFC is I feel like there are some fighters that get to the UFC and they have that wow factor, like wow, I've made it, and they look around a lot and they,
Hmm.
it's almost like they can't believe they made it, but they're
Hmm.
here. And whereas you have someone like yourself and you come in on short notice and you take Topuria for all 3 rounds and you had moments in there absolutely, and it's like what would you have looked like with a full camp,
Hmm.
and knowing who your opponent was, and you had a lot of time to prepare. I really wonder how that fight would have gone had you have had a full camp.
Yeah, I definitely think it would have been very interesting. So 13 days notice is hard. So we only, honest to God, we only did a couple. It was much more just go out and see what he does. Like kick heavy was a game plan, but on his previous tapes, he had two tendencies we're hoping to pick up on. Was one where his lead hand was fairly low, and one was how he sort of retreats his left leg back off a kick, and then he'll decide to come forward and go after that. He didn't do either of them things. So besides that, it was pretty much just fighting on the fly. But I also think for him was in a very similar situation because I'm very well aware of that. Like my past couple of performance hasn't been against the highest level of guys, and I've put them away, but I haven't done anything spectacular with my striking. And like if you look back against the fight against Sam, my hands and my kicks still weren't too red hot. So when you YouTube me, you probably see a lot, and I think that's what had his team and probably the odds makers. They're really thinking like, oh, this guy's a wrestler. He's not going to be able to stand off it. He's going to get knocked out in a round, and hence why the odds were so far, sort of thing in there.
Mm.
But yeah, it's been cool, and also just with the media side of things. Like as soon as I started doing interviews, I was already making fun of myself. Like I said, I think I've been very lucky to be around this from such a young age. I've always had cameras in my faces. Even when I was winning local jiu-jitsu comps, like Joe was always trying to get me in the paper, get me on the local Win News or something.
Yeah.
So talking to a camera is pretty much second nature to me. And I think that's what helps fighters like you say, because when I walked in, I wasn't taken back like, oh my God, I wasn't, oh my God, there's 30 people in this room asking me all these questions. I was worried where I was just able to be myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like maybe a few years ago things would have been different, but where I feel like the media in this country is definitely progressing, and it's nice to see, when guys like Mitch and Joel and Submission Radio and we all sort of come together and create this little community. But we obviously do this because we love it, but it in turn helps you guys. And I guess I've never realized that either, is that it does help you guys to a degree prepare when you sit there in a media day and you have, instead of a one-on-one with Joel or whoever, you have now 30 people in front of you. It's still, whether it's one person or 30, you're still used to it. So I can imagine how that would help you a lot. And I did want to ask, what was one of the biggest things that you sort of took away from 312, whether it be fight week or the fight itself, that you learned and can look to take to your next fight?
I think honestly, it was just to back myself because I've been very, how, if you ask anyone how I am in the gym, until pretty much the last fight, but even in that last fight, there were still tendencies, but how I am in the gym isn't how I fight. And my team and that were very, very well aware of that fact. So for me, actually, it was sort of funny because it was like I never fought to my level when I should have been beating these guys. And
Mm.
then I go out and fight Tapura's older brother
Mm.
on 13 days' notice with a big weight cut and everything on the line, all of this pressure. And I just go out and I lost, but I can happily say that was the best version of myself I ever brought to a
Yeah.
cage. So it
Yeah.
was more just knowing that when I need to show up, I can show up. So it's just about backing and believing in myself.
Yeah, 100%. That's a good way of looking at it. And I know they've like you said, they've offered you another fight. I did see that earlier in the week. Now, what was sort of their reasoning? Was it your willingness to step up on short notice? Was it your attitude? Because you were very respectful all week and, made weight. And I suppose when they see someone coming in on debut and saying, yep, I'll make weight. And when you do make weight, I know the UFC has such a thing against guys that don't make weight. I know it really gets them pretty fired up, and I can imagine why. If you sign on a dotted line to say you're going to agree to a weight and you can't make that weight, then it would frustrate them. So what was their reasoning specifically why they said they wanted to give you another shot?
I think honestly, just because how I went in a fight, like I'm not stupid, I'm not oblivious. They probably thought, all right, he might give him a tough fight for a round, but Topuria is probably gonna knock him out, and we can build Topuria off that and give him a highlight reel finish sort of thing. So I'm very well aware of how that sort of business aspect of that. They might not have thought that, but I know a lot of the fans and everything thought that sort of thing. So obviously just to go out there and perform how I did. And I think also it does help just like being featured on Embedded, having that attachment to Volk. So I really did get the sort of nation behind me. And I do honestly I think mine and Tapura's fight was probably the third most hyped fight besides the co-main and the main event.
I'd agree with that.
Delivered. Pardon me?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Even just being around the media circles during fight week, it was very much, if not, you were probably, I would say, one of the top stories. If not, I think you were neck and neck with Dricus and Sean, considering it was Topuria. And Topuria, I feel like, is a bigger name than, at this point, Dricus and Strickland. Strickland's big, but just considering what Ilia's done, Alexander he gets that rub from Ilia.
Exactly.
So
now obviously got the rub of Volk as well. So
yeah, 100%. So I 100% understand where you're coming from there. With regards to the next fight, then, in your mind, is there a time frame that I know you're training, so I guess you'd be ready whenever. It'd be cool if you get on 314 and be on a fight card with Volk, but I know it's pretty close. You might be cutting it a bit thin there, but what's a time frame look like for you?
I think around the middle of the year. So initially I was thinking maybe Miami, but like I did after, if you go back to February after I fought, that was 5 fights in 11 months. So then if I did Miami, that would have been like 6 fights in 13 months, which is very active, especially for a professional. I'm a very active fighter. My biggest hindrance was injuries, and that cost me to have 3 fights in 3 years. But before that, as an amateur, I did 3 fights in 3 days over a weekend. So as long as I'm fit and I'm healthy, I'm always game to fight. But now I'm just going to give my body a little bit of time to rest. It's funny, I say rest, but I'm still at the gym 7 days a week. Yeah. But training multiple hours a day sort of thing. But just that little bit less intensity from a camp and just fix a couple of tendencies. And it's good too because now Volk's in camp, so he's bringing a lot of good guys over. So instead of me having to worry about, I need to do this specific look for my fight, I get to pretty much mimic even our session this afternoon, which was a war wrestling session, then wrestling after, I got to do like a more of a Diego Lopez approach, where I was pretty much just gunning for submissions off a war, jumping gillies, try all that sort of stuff. I'm trying to give that look, and that helps me learn a new style of fighting. Whereas I went straight back into camp, it's only going to be working on what I'm already good at, which is always good and it's how you have to win fights. But if you have this little break, I think that's where really truly grow as a martial artist and really sort of add more tools to your arsenal. And because I've had so many fights back to back, take these 1 or 2 months and really just sort of improve overall, and then I can take these skills, hone in for the next fight, which will be roughly around middle of the year, we think.
Well, that could really work out well because I saw Volk on Ariel last week, or late last week, and listening to him talk, and he was saying that with a win over Diego, he'd get back in there in 3 months. Realistically, he wants to get back in. So time-wise, I mean, you could end up back on a Volk card anyway, which just for you would be cool. I feel like to fight with a guy you've known for so long, a guy who has put a lot into you and you've put a lot into each other. You guys work pretty closely together. So I imagine that would be pretty cool. How cool is that seeing him? Obviously, he's had the last year off away from fighting, and listening to him in that interview was actually quite powerful. It was really, really cool actually to hear him be so honest. He's always a bit of an honest guy in the media, and he's a straight shooter. I feel like he would be like that in person as well. But just hearing him, sort of say what he's been through, where he didn't know before he took that break, he didn't know what he'd be doing after fighting. Now he knows that he's good. He's okay. He's set. What's it like for you though to know that he's back in camp and to see that fire in his eyes again?
Bro, it's incredible. I think I really just admire about him just from a person is that he's very open and honest with everything. Even say after the Islam fight, after he went out and did that province camera, it's like he's not afraid to make himself vulnerable in front of millions of people. And I think that's like the number one sort of characteristic of like what sounds cliche, but like a strong man is. It's
Yeah.
someone who's going out willing to put like the heart on the sleeve, show the emotion, but then bounce back from that sort of adversity. So I really, even outside of fighting and everything, just as like a role model and a friend, it's one of like the most inspiring things you can see these days, sort of thing. But for him actually being back in camp, it's just there's just a different energy around the gym, sort of thing. Like you've got him coming back to reclaim his belt, and just it's cool to see because we do specific fight simulation workouts. And like, so us boys, when we get fit, we're like, fuck yeah, we're killing it. And then we watch Volk do one and like, wow, there are levels to it. I remember just
Yeah.
last Wednesday before I flew down to Hex on the first day, I was doing a Shark Tank and I had Malarkey next to me and it was like 3 rounds in and I looked at him and I was like, fuck, he's so sharp already. Like he's just on point. It's just like, it's hard to explain unless you see it, but it's like anything, when you see a truly great high level athlete in anything, there's like a certain like, aura or like almost like a magic to it where it's just like poetic, and just seeing him back in that motion and that flow state just doing his thing whilst getting shark tanked is just it's just inspiring stuff, because the stuff you look at and you're like you're in the same gym as him, you've been training alongside him, so it's very sort of cool and it's like this is where I really want to get to.
Oh, absolutely. I know what you mean about that, because there is something about, that people find fascinating. I'm one of them, about the elite of the elite in anything that I've just started getting into chess, and I saw
Hmm.
Rogan's interview with Magnus Carlsen, and I've started watching
Yeah.
his chess stuff, and I find that really interesting because he's the 1% of the 1%, like Volk
Hmm.
is. So I know what you mean there. It is cool, and especially to be around that as well. You get the rub off him. Everyone gets better because of a guy like Volk. Even when he retires, him around that gym still helps you guys on an exponential level. Was part of you at all, from a friend's point of view, considering what he wanted to get back against Topuria, was there any part of you like kind of disappointed that he didn't get the Topuria rematch immediately? Because it may still come down the line depending on what happens at lightweight. I still think there's a chance we could
Hmm.
see Volk and Topuria too at lightweight. Maybe they're both champions of their respective divisions. So, but was any part of you, a bit disappointed you didn't get to see that right now?
I wouldn't say disappointed. It was more just like fighting. It is what it is. You can't really pick your fights, and there's so many things that go on. So main thing is, I just really wish I could. We people and fans and everything get to see like prime Volk not coming off circumstances in the Islam fight and stuff like that,
Yeah.
where you get the prime best version of Volk against the best version of Ilia, purely because I think it would be one of the like best, most high level MMA fights you'll ever see. I feel like it would be a very similar thing to when Volk fought Islam, where it's just a cracking fight. It's still the best in the world going at it, and I think obviously that got slightly taken away just due to the turnaround and everything like that. But for disappointed, I wouldn't say so, because I still think we're going to go out, or Volk's going to go out in Miami in April. And how he's looking now, I'm scared to be his training partner for the next 6 weeks, because the man is on fire. Like he's bringing some other boys over. But it's going to be very cool to see, because I think we're going to see sort of, not like a redemption arc, because like there's no redemption needed. He's already proved he's one of the
Mm.
best in the world to ever do it. But just to almost like a you must have forgot performance, come out and just shut out Diego and really sort of cement his legacy as pretty much the greatest featherweight to ever do it.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's already the greatest featherweight to ever do it without question. Last one, Colby, and I'll let you go. Ilia Topuria moving up to 155 was some pretty huge news last week.
Mhm.
As a guy that's 40's older brother, I just want to know what your thoughts are on him moving to 55. There's a chance there at him fighting Islam, so for the title, which I think makes all the sense in the world.
Mhm.
How do you see a fight between Islam and Ilia played out if you had to make a prediction?
Uh-huh. I think it's always I can't go against it's hard because you can't really go against either of them.
I know.
It's say it might be like a 55 Islam, 45 Topuria, but I think the thing is people don't understand is like you see Volk go up and like arguably, obviously besides Islam's loss, Volk's given him the hardest fight. He gave him a harder fight than Poirier. I think people don't understand that, but because people are fans of fighters, there still can be a very separate skill gap between two divisions, which is 4 kilos separate. So
Mm.
you look at what Max did to Justin Gaethje, like scored him for pretty much 5 rounds, knocked him out clean. Volk took Islam, obviously, on the right segments to one of the hardest fight of his career. So I think people underestimate sort of like the fan value of like the Michael Chandlers and everything like that, where they got the hype of going and fight. And even though it's just that division low, they don't necessarily, especially with Volk, didn't get that like the respect for the pound for pound skill. Well, even when Max moved up, people thought Gaethje was going to flatline him. So I do think like them lighter divisions are super competitive, but I honestly believe the like top elite of featherweight overall is better than the top elite of lightweight, except for Islam, who's at that top. And the only person I see who I think could probably touch Islam at this point would be Topuria. And it's just that thing with that power factor, but you don't know how that's going to translate to 55. He's obviously going to be bigger, but his punch power might not translate because he's not fighting smaller guys. He might be that little bit slower. So it's all them little X factors. So I guess you have to see how the fight plays out. But I do think people always count out the smaller guys moving up, which I understand for weight reasons, but for skill, I do think 90% like the lighter guys going up normally do have that sort of skill advantage, especially when you move to the heavier divisions. But say like your Volk, your Maxes, your Ilias, like I feel like you get them three against any of the top lightweights, 90% of the time them three guys will come up on top against any of them guys.
Yeah, no, good, absolutely. I love your analysis, man. I really appreciate that. Colby, thank you for the time, man. I do appreciate it. I know it's been a big afternoon for you, so to jump on at night means a lot to me.
All good, brother.
Man, I look forward to your next fight and seeing you get a full camp and seeing you get your just due, because I feel like this next fight is where we're going to get to see your best version. And I speak for a lot of people when I say I'm really, really excited, and I wish you all the best, man. You're a really good guy, and I really wish you all the success in the world. And I will definitely want to chat to you before your next fight.
Well, Josh, thank you very much for having me on.